Hi. With a population estimated at about 167 million and roughly 370 different ethnic groups on almost as many languages and dialects, Nigeria is a country recognized by people of all nations as the most populous and one of the most endowed countries on the continent of Africa. And our question is thus, how do you lead such a group of people with such divergent ideas, aspirations, and always full of question? And this is the focus of this special news documentary. In just 30 minutes of every week, you'll be closer to the President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan than ever before as he swings into action. You will understand the reasons why he does certain things. I am Patrick Oke, and welcome to the very first edition of the program, The President in Action.
It's been rough and tough, but Nigeria has made it. In Africa's largest democracy, the road has been difficult, demanding, excruciating, but we've done it. The combination of a democratic experiment that was started in 1960, tested by fire in 1966 by the Nigerian Civil War, resuscitated in 1979 for a period of 4 years, doused once more in 1983, only to emerge in 1991. But even this wasn't to last. In 1993, the anti-democratic forces proved that they had just been smitten but not killed. But in 1999, Nigerians were in unison to say, "Thus far, no more." In Africa's largest democracy, a true democratic president was elected, breaking a 33-year jinx. In 2007, the first ever civilian-to-civilian elections were held, amid cries that we hadn't quite gotten it right. But in 2011, Nigeria held its largest general elections ever. 73 million Nigerians registered to vote. 39.4 million actually voted. There were 20 presidential candidates, 315 gubernatorial candidates, 887 senatorial candidates, 2,370 House of Representatives candidates, and 3,964 State Assembly candidates. Again, the road has been rough and tough, but Nigerians can look back and say, "We came, we saw, we have conquered." Let's all join hands and face its challenges. Let's celebrate and support the leaders now elected into office, poised to take Nigeria to the next level. Congratulations, Nigeria. All given, we've all proven that we are a good people, a great nation.
The fanfare that greeted the emergence of Dr. Ebele Jonathan as President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. On the 29th of May 2011, he was officially inaugurated. Now that's 4 years ago. May seem a long time, but pretty short in the life of a nation that in 2014 celebrated its 100 years of existence. 4 years seems a pretty short time to impact a nation of 170 million people in all aspects of national life. How do you assess a leader's performance? How does a leader become popular? Most people assess a leader by his mere popularity. This might not be a good measure of a leader's effectiveness because it might just be a play to the gallery to attract favorable accolades instead of the hard measures
which at times may seem difficult to swallow, but has a long-term beneficial effect. Sometimes one has to be cruel to be kind. So, away from euphoria and make-believe, how do you really assess a good leader? Does a good leader have to meet the expectations of every group of stakeholders in a country? Or are there empirical scientific methods of assessing the effectiveness of a leader? Well, let's not reinvent the wheel. There are international criteria for assessing a government. The main ones are: how has its economic policies advanced the growth, development of the nation? How has a nation's resources been used in providing infrastructures that ease the life of its people? How has the actions and policies of the government added value to the lives of the greater number of people? How has it opened up new avenues that more of its people have access to means of livelihood? How has the nation been placed to be an active part of the world's economic wheel, thus giving its citizens the avenue to participate robustly in the world's economic activities? Since investment means growth, how has the country been made conducive to international economic activity and investment? How has the government enhanced the development of its main economic stay? In Nigeria's case, agriculture. How has its social amenities stood up? Healthcare, and so on. How has it handled the development of its minor citizens to take up in future the mantle of leadership through qualitative education? What about the security of its citizens? The social scientist Maslow was one of the more prominent psychologists to grade man's hierarchy of needs. At the bottom are physiological needs. At the apex, self-actualization. Developing nations pretty much adopt this model, starting from living standards of citizens to national prestige or stature. People in developing countries strive to move up to the ladder of development in order to meet basic needs and have the opportunity to lead richer, more fulfilling lives. Given all the above, can we leave sentiments aside and really scrutinize President Goodluck Jonathan's administration along all these indices to see if he has made a difference? In doing this, we must also compare it to the standard of his predecessors. Was the country better in their time? Or were they also grappling with the same intractable problems that defied solutions? So come with me. Let's run the test. First, Index of Development. How has the economic policies of the administration advanced the growth and development of the nation? Fact. Recent economic surveys say Nigeria is the second in the top 10 of most admired brands by Africans, second to the United States, South Africa a distant seventh. That's not all. In the last 4 years, Nigeria is now rated as the largest economy in Africa, ahead of South Africa, which has enjoyed that status for some time now. That means with an estimated GDP of $300 billion, Nigeria is an economic nation of note. Also, under President Goodluck Jonathan, Nigeria's GDP grew by a record of 8.29% during the last quarter of 2010 and by over 7% in 2011. In the first quarter of 2012, Nigeria had verifiably become the fourth fastest growing economy in the world, as recently attested to by several multilateral bodies and trading partners. The oil sector, although responsible for only 14% of GDP, has driven most of that reckoning. Oil revenues have funded the 36 states of the country. Income from this sector have had to be steady. Government policies have had to sustain this income, fill up pitfalls in its management and block leakages, while maintaining its quota. While achieving milestones in maintaining oil and gas revenues, government is relentless in looking for alternatives.
Mr. President recognizes that Nigeria cannot continue to do business as usual. And to do business as usual is to continue to depend just on oil as the source of driving the economy. And Mr. President recognizes that. And therefore, he's driving a big agenda to diversify the economy also away from oil into other things in which we have comparative advantage. Of course, Mr. President has chosen agriculture as the major issue for us to do.
Agriculture.
You take a look at the potential that we have. Nigeria has 84 million hectares of land, and that makes us one of the largest, people with the largest amount of land in Africa. We have water. You have 273 billion cubic meters of water. So we've got the land, we've got the water, we've got the cheap labor. Nigeria should be a powerhouse in food. So what Mr. President has done is that he has set up what we call the Agricultural Transformation Agenda.
What then would you call a country of nearly 170 million people that cannot feed its entire citizenry? Government, they say, has no business in business except to provide the platform and enabling environment for business investments to thrive, both domestic and foreign direct investments, FDI. In 2012 alone, the federal government says 14 new rice mills with capacity to process 240 metric tons of rice were set up by the private sector. This is part of the larger goal to make Nigeria self-sufficient in rice production by 2015 and put an end to the 356 billion naira spent annually on rice importation. In fact, if you sum up what Nigeria spends importing rice, wheat, sugar, fish in 1 year, it adds up to a staggering $11 billion. As the Minister of Agriculture, Dr. Kumi Adesina, said, Nigeria is importing what it has the capacity to produce in abundance. Hence, he says, and I quote him, "Our vision is to make Nigeria an agriculture and industrialized economy, using a government-enabled private sector-driven approach."
What Mr. President is doing that is very different is that we have ended taking agriculture as a way of life, agriculture as a development activity. We started doing agriculture as a business. Nigeria should not be importing food. Nigeria should be a major global powerhouse in food. And so that's what we've started doing. Now agriculture is a business. And the results that have been achieved are quite exciting, not only for us, but even globally.
And one giant leap to begin to turn things around is the dismantling of the fertilizer and seed racketeering within 60 days of President Jonathan's intervention. This has eliminated all the middlemen in between, and fertilizers are now sold directly to farmers. Having captured a database of 1.5 million farmers and still counting, the Growth Enhancement Scheme ensures that farmers receive 50% subsidy on fertilizers through the use of their mobile phones or what is devised as Electronic Wallet System, e-wallet.
It is recorded that in 2013, a total of 138,802 metric tons of fertilizer and 10,974 metric tons of seeds got to farmers in 517 active redemption centers spread across the states of the Federation. The e-wallet system is the first of its kind in Africa, and already several African countries have indicated interest to implement the Nigerian model.
One is to ensure Mr. President's transformation succeeds by way of making the private sector to be in the lead while government facilitates. One of the areas where we did that was to transform the fertilizer subsector, where we have the private sector procuring and also distributing fertilizer. And then very recently, Nigeria has a draft national fertilizer bill, which will provide large manufacturers of fertilizer to manufacture fertilizer in Nigeria, which can be used by farmers in Nigeria and also outside Nigeria. And this can go beyond West Africa, it can go beyond Africa and even parts of the world.
With the improved production envisaged, perhaps the question to ask is what to do with increased output. Dr. Adesina has an answer. He says that the agriculture transformation agenda was focusing more on value addition, and the priority areas included cotton, sorghum, oil palm, cassava, rice, cocoa, livestock, and fisheries. Of all of these, the one that made headlines was the introduction of cassava flour as a substitute for wheat flour in bread making and confectionery. Well, you can say that the Jonathan era has ushered in a new lexicon in the Nigerian confectionery subsector, cassava bread. Have you tasted it yet? Try it for all it's worth. Nigeria is ranked as the highest producer of cassava in the world, with an annual output of 34 million metric tons. And certainly, no one can fault the president on this one. And we hear 253 billion naira would be saved annually due to the use of cassava flour in place of imported wheat flour. Exports of dried cassava chips began in July 2012, and this represents the first time Nigeria will achieve commercial scale export of dried cassava chips, which is estimated to earn about $136 million annually in foreign exchange. The transformation going on in this sector, according to the minister, is attracting FDIs such as Dominion Farms, which has invested $40 million in commercial rice production on 30,000 hectares of farmland in Taraba State. This is revolutionary, and only time will reveal the ripple effect impact on employment, food sufficiency, and foreign exchange earnings.
Our exports have grown. Export in Nigeria now constitute 31% of the total export, and this is a phenomenal thing coming from a country that had over 90% oil export and less than 10% non-oil. Today we have 31% non-oil and 69% oil. This is a good diversification of our economy that happened under Mr. President Goodluck Jonathan administration.
All major government projects are funded from its main economic source, oil. If this sector is managed properly, then the economic health of the nation can be assured. How has government managed this sector? The chief driver of this Nigeria's main economic resource is the NNPC, charged with the exclusive responsibility for exploiting, refining, transporting petrochemicals and products, and marketing Nigeria's crude oil, with a series of upstream and downstream activities. How has government policies in recent years enabled the NNPC to find and sustain the measures that have brought Nigeria's economic reckoning to its highest ever? The federal government has ensured an all-year-round production of 2.3 million barrels per day of crude oil, and increased gas production of 8.1 billion cubic feet from 6.3 billion cubic feet.
Apart from stemming the violence in oil-producing areas by some innovative ideas like the Amnesty Program, by which various Nigerian youths are rehabilitated through various incentives and training in peaceful resolution, a permanent joint task force has been put in place to patrol constantly Niger Delta's oil fields and apprehend, when necessary, pipeline vandals and crude oil thieves. To bolster the sector and ensure its steady income, government has enabled the NNPC to do quite a bit. Revamping and rehabilitating previously non-functioning petroleum product depots and pipelines, including the Benin Depot, Warri Pipeline, Aba Pipeline, Enugu-Gombe and Port Harcourt depots, and restored product supply to the facilities. The NNPC has also totally rebuilt the burned-down Okrika products loading arm and jetty. To sustain oil output, the NNPC has commissioned the Usan Floating Storage and Offloading FPSO vessel with a processing capacity of 180,000 barrels per day, operated by Mobile. The Usan field is currently producing 103,000 barrels a day. The NNPC has significantly increased the participation of indigenous oil and gas companies in the industry, which has resulted in the commissioning of several critical infrastructure projects by Nigerian companies, including the establishment of Ibok Terminal with current daily crude oil production of 7,000 barrels per day and a plateau production of 50,000 barrels at full capacity. Commissioned Africa's largest vessel, christened Akbaogene, an offshore pipe laying derrick barge, in May 2013. Everybody is talking about the next big mineral earner, gas, a byproduct of the crude oil process. The NNPC has put in place a massive program to produce and harness gas and make it a veritable foreign exchange earner. For this, a lot of pipeline infrastructures have had to be planned, built, or rehabilitated, including Itoki Olorin Shogo, Escravos Warri Oben, Imo River Alaoji, Oben Gereju, kicked off 1,860 kilometers of ongoing gas pipeline infrastructure, comprising Obiajo Obricom Oben OB3, Calabar Ajaokuta Kano. Initiated a gas flare-down campaign, which in 2 years have reduced gas flaring by 20% to an approximately 16.7% of produced gas. Has also embarked on a successful monetization of flared gas to compressed natural gas used to power vehicles and industries, with over 2,500 taxicabs running in Benin City and many more being connected daily. The NNPC has established a massive gas complex called the Ogidingbe Gas Industrial City in Delta State. Work is in active progress. And have commenced the front-end engineering design feed of the 850 metric cubic feet of gas processing facility to support domestic supply of gas and the Ogidingbe Industrial Park. The government is strategically positioning Nigeria to be a regional hub for gas. This will create an unprecedented number of jobs. To enable Nigerians to participate more actively in our oil economy, the government has passed the Local Content Act. This has recorded a huge success in the oil and gas sector by ensuring an unprecedented tonnage of work placed in local yards by operators, and growth in indigenous participation in the provision of goods and services to the upstream sector from 10% to 60% in 4 years.
The unprecedented achievements of the President are numerous. In the oil and gas sector, the Nigerian Content Bill promulgated into law by Mr. President in 2010 has ensured that in the downstream service sector, Nigerians are beginning to take first consideration and to hold their own beside their foreign counterparts. For the first time, we're actually beginning to produce parts that are needed in that sector. Fabrication mills, pipe mills, and getting the necessary knowledge and transfers of skill and capacity in the oil and gas sector.
And as a direct result of that law, Royal Dutch Shell awarded 7.8 billion naira, that is $49.9 million US, to a Nigerian firm, SCC Limited, for the manufacture of high-pressure pipelines that would otherwise have been awarded to a foreign firm. Also, as a result of this law, ExxonMobil awarded an offshore platform contract to a local firm, Nigerdoc Nigeria PLC, that would otherwise have been awarded to a foreign firm. These have greatly encouraged indigenous participation. The NNPC, encouraged by government, has also significantly increased the level of indigenous assets such as marine vessels and rigs in supporting oil and gas industry operations. It has also maximized local value by encouraging the manufacture of equipment components and parts in the country, in furtherance of the Nigerian Content Act 2010.
The Petroleum Industry Bill, when promulgated into law, will ensure that the oil and gas sector in this country moves away from the non-transparency and opaqueness of the past and becomes a much more accountable area, and that revenues accruing to government will be much more increased, while we ensure as well that for our investors, they are assured of a strong sector where they will get the right returns for their investment as we go forward into the deep and ultra-deep offshore. And in terms of gas, we are strongly supporting the power sector to ensure that Mr. President's aim to give Nigeria adequate power supply is met by ensuring that we have the gas volumes over the next few years to adequately support the power sector.
Down to earth, however, what might become so visible in this sector to the average Nigerian is the fact that the nightmare of fuel scarcity has to a large extent been buried. In the past 4 years, incidents of fuel scarcity have been very few and far between. In fact, far from the situation in the past administrations, attendants now actually beg people to come in and buy fuel.
What this country has lacked is a lot to do with planning. If you've planned properly, execute properly, it will be easy to get to your destination. So what the team is doing today, like I said, is intangible. But if you see the changes that are happening, which maybe is not noticeable to people, but I can tell you, things are changing, and as those things are actualized, the country will be a totally different place.
For the first time also, the pump price of petrol has come down from 97 naira per litre to 87 naira, a significant 10 naira drop. One can attribute this to falling oil prices, but other governments could easily have ignored the fall. The gains of the new thinking in government have been far-reaching.
Sometimes people assess government based on their habits. And I also noticed in the other assessment, 2 ministries, Ministry of National Planning was given average, Trades and Investments was given average. And as I came into, I descended from 2007, and I've worked with 3 ministers of national planning, I've worked with 3 ministers of trade and investment. They have never done what is been done today.
Join us in the next episode as we examine the second criteria for assessing a government, namely, how has its resources been used to provide infrastructures that ease the life of its people. Next week on The President in Action.